Hey, guess what? We're 5 minutes late, but because we're no driving gloves, we're sorry. Some last minute changes, last minute happenings. And of course, we didn't do an intro last week, and I kind of like the show without an intro, so we're going to skip the intro. So just remember, it's No Driving Gloves. Follow us on, the good old Facebook, nodrivinggloves.com/Facebook or /YouTube, or go to our Instagram. We're kind of everywhere. Buy us a coffee, help support the show. Will's kind of found us a last minute guest. Derek's running a little bit behind. He may join us later. And Will's filled me in a little bit, but Will, it's going to be your show tonight.
I'm not used to that.
Oh, you know how to take the lead.
Well, people say I'm pretty good at running my mouth. Looks like we just lost Ray. So,
well, maybe he'll come back.
Well, we had Ray Iddings, who's a good friend of mine. I got to know him really in the last year and a half of my life. Become friends pretty quickly. Hopefully, he can make it back.
He's just popped back. Let me add him.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So I'll kind of go back. I've got to know Ray really, really well over the last year and a half. We've become pretty good friends. We've bumped noggins, and we've kissed and made up, and
we don't want to hear about that after the kind of stuff Jeff put on TV this morning.
And that was probably it's kind of funny how a lot of my really close friends in the very beginning, we maybe kind of got off on the wrong foot. And then it was like, you know what? We really got a lot in common. And, we think a lot alike about things, and we wound up being really good friends. So that's kind of in the nutshell with Ray and myself. He's been over to the shop a lot of times. We're building a pretty special car for a very special man in Dan Duffy that will be debuting at SEMA. And he's came over and done some videography work with it. Another car that we're debuting at SEMA for Hush Maddie's come over and done some work, some videography work with it on us installing some stuff on the Cadillac, and has really introduced me to a lot of cool people too. Clay Milliken. The reason I know Clay Milliken is because of Ray Iddings. And so, just a guy that's become a dear friend, and I like spending time with him, and we're both kind of assholes. So, it's just kind of, good to share your friendship with people that, stuff you have in common. And he loves cars. He's been in the car game for a long, long time. Not necessarily on the building side, but more on the producer side. He's was one of the very first people to kind of have a podcast called Volkscast that he's actually kind of started re-releasing some old episodes that are pretty freaking awesome. You need to go listen to them. And been a part of some pretty major TV shows that have kicked some ass. So anyway, there's my introduction to Ray. I'll let him kind of talk about a couple of the TV shows he was a big part of, and we can go from there.
Well, before we do that, so you guys had a question on your Facebook page tonight when Carmen Diaz were introduced. Too easy.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, now I know who you are because I just said back to you, well, email us the answer, and it should be easy because we might have actually given the answer away last week when we told you when Carmen Diaz were introduced. I just kind of found it weird that they were introduced on a date, and then within a week, 20 years later, they stopped them. So...
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I didn't want.
Let me see here.
I didn't want to do the easy, low-hanging fruit. The VW stuff, that's pretty easy. I want the hard stuff.
Well, now you fall into where my father is. He's the one who commented above you that he's not eligible. It's, now that you're on the show, I don't know if we can let you win it. We can probably send you, the same sticker package I'm sending to everybody else.
No, let someone else win.
And if
someone else win.
Well, I'm going for 3 winners, and actually we've still got space for at least one more winner. So I haven't checked in a bit, but so I guess that falls back into that answer because of your Volkscast.
Yeah, so that's kind of I'll tell you that story if you care to hear. Let's see. I guess so. It was 2004. I was working, doing commercial loans, and me and the guy that would do all the appraisals for me, he and I both grew up on the West Coast. So we had this fondness and love for air-cooled Volkswagens. And so we decided I lived in the Midwest at that time, lived in Indianapolis, and we're like, there are no VW events in the Midwest. We should put on a VW event. So we put on a racing series, 4 events, and it did all right. It was fun. A lot of great cars came out of the Midwest, a lot of fast cars. And so we decided to try it again. And, we do the racing series, and we get a call. Our season finale was at IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park, where the U.S. Nationals are held, the track where I fell in love with drag racing, right? So they called me up, and they're like, hey, we're this internet radio station, and we want to come cover your event. And I was like, great, that would be awesome. So they came out to cover the event, and their color guy, the guy who did all the color commentary, didn't show up. So the guy from the radio station says, hey, if you'll come up in the booth and just tell me what I'm looking at, let the audience know what we're looking at, I'll help you get through it. He's like, because I don't know crap about VWs. And I was like, sure. It was great because we had like the world's fastest VW out there, the Paradise Express. You're looking at like 675 at 217 for an air-cooled VW. Pretty quick. And
that's moving. And what year was that?
2005. And so we do the podcast or the internet radio. It wasn't called podcasting yet, because you got to remember 2005. Give you some perspective. February of 2005 is when YouTube started. Okay, so we're just getting into that kind of thing. The iPod was only 3 or 4 years old at that point.
2005 is credited as the birth year of podcasting.
Yeah, that's when
the RSS feed was created. Or invented.
And we got to thank Steve Jobs for that, right? Steve Jobs, because of the iPod. Well, so the term podcast came from Steve Jobs. So 2000 is when the iPod, 2001 is when the iPod was introduced. By 2005, it was really starting to take off. The iPod was. And so this internet radio thing, he rebranded as podcasting. iPod, get it? So I did this, internet radio thing, and it did really, really well for the station. The guy calls me up like a couple days after the event and says, hey, that was one of our highest rated shows. Do you think you could do a show every week? And I said, I don't know, but I'll try. So I would drive about 45 minutes away from my house to Noblesville, Indiana, and record this show it was originally called Volks Bash Radio, because that was the name of the drag racing series. And then when Steve Jobs went to calling everything cast, we decided to call it Volks Cast. And that was it. It was weird because here I was doing this show that was on the internet, and probably like you guys had a little bit when you started doing this, people are like, what the hell is that? What are you doing?
People are still kind of like that.
yeah, they are.
Well, what people don't realize, these shows are hard. Getting guests are difficult. Asking good questions is difficult. I do an hour to an hour and a half long show every week. And the prep that it took killed me. And my show had a pretty simple premise. My premise was, my first question to every guest was, what's your VW story? Right? Because everybody has one. Everybody of a certain age has some crazy story of being in a bug where the floor's about to fall out of it. And there's like 27 of your closest friends, and you've decided to drive 4 hours out of town, and you spent more time pushing it than driving it, right? And because I always loved VW drag racing, I wanted to talk to all those guys that I loved when I was a kid, you know? So guys like Ron Fleming and Clyde Berg and Dino Don Chamberlain, and you know, that led me into meeting guys like Dean Kirsten, who was one of the editors at Hot VWs, and R.K. Smith, who was an editor, and Dave Cormack, who did VW Trends. You know, all these guys that when I was a kid, you know, those magazines were everything, right? You get that magazine, you'd flip it open and have those beautiful pictures of cars and this amazing text about this car that somebody built, and you know, it was kind of magical. So anyway, I got to do that, and I did that from 2005 till 2007 is when I stopped doing that show. But when I stopped doing that show, I was doing like 4 car shows at the time, and then my secret shows, which I still do to this day, are a bunch of financial services podcasts for like big insurance companies. But it allowed me to go places that I would have never thought I would get to go just because of an internet radio show. You know, that's how I met Rich Christensen, the host of Pinks. And that's how I became a TV producer, you know? So I owe everything to VWs.
Well, there's kind of a reason we do this this madness, and I've talked about it a little bit on the show. I've fallen deep into I do a couple of podcasts a week. I produce a couple of podcasts a week, and I edit even on top of that. It's quickly became my full-time job, and sometimes I'm a little bit
editing
overworked.
is the worst.
But
all I do is show up and run my mouth. You know. John does all the hard work. So Ray, can you talk about a couple of the TV shows that you were a big part of?
I've been really lucky to have you know, when I met Rich through Volkscast, Rich was the first year that he was doing Pinks. And I wonder if you guys remember Pinks off of Speed TV, you know, where lose your race, lose the ride, right? Where 2 guys would race and 1 guy would lose his car.
Man, that show was huge. I mean, they actually came right down the road to Steele, Alabama, and my dad and I went to the, you know, live filming of it.
Yeah, that was
pretty
the
awesome.
All Out, right? That was the Pinks All Out, right?
Yep.
And you know, probably good time to point this out. I don't know if Rich gets enough credit for, you know, he kind of created a category. He and I, you know, I talk to Rich probably 2 or 3 times every day, and we laugh all the time because, you know, all the Street Outlaw guys, all of those Street Outlaw guys were either on Pinks or Pinks All Out or another show that I did called Pastime. You know, Pastime was my favorite. I loved doing Pastime. Pastime was on 4 times a day, every day on Speed. You know, it was a game show.
it's kind of like American Pickers on History.
Why does everyone bring up American Pickers? Can I tell my American Picker story?
Oh, I know a lot of American Picker stories I can't even repeat.
Well,
so
you'll love this one. So I passed on American Pickers.
So would have you been Mike or Frank?
No. It was Mike and Frank's show. They brought it to us to produce it as a production company.
Oh.
And I liked the idea, but Frank was not my favorite person. No offense, Frank, but I just didn't see it with Frank. I liked Mike. I just didn't see it with Frank. So, yeah. So Clay Milliken, who Will Will was giving me a little crap about. Clay gives me crap about American Pickers all the time. He'll send me pictures of him watching it on TV and go, "Hey, guess what I'm watching?" Like, great. So how I met Clay was we did a show called Blow It Up together. That was Clay's first TV show, my first TV show. And basically the premise of the show was, at that time, so that was about 2007. So build shows were huge, right? You had Monster Garage and American Chopper and you just knew. So they'd spend the whole hour showing you these guys building the car. And then as the credits roll, they show it driving around the parking lot. And the second the camera stopped rolling, the muffler falls off, or if you stand too close, the paint job looks like crap. And so Rich and I had this idea that what we really wanted to do was a show that started after that. So you let these guys build the car, they bring it out to the track, and we punish the crap out of it. Kind of celebrate the builders. And it was so much fun. So much fun just from hanging out with Clay, right? The best part of that show was getting to know Clay. That's how to this day, if you ask Clay in his phone, he still has Ray Blow It Up in his phone. That's how he has me in there. So.
Well, something we talk about on this podcast a lot is young people getting involved in motorsports, the automotive side of things. And my favorite show that you were a part of had a lot to do with that. And man, I if I would have known you then, I would have been that little guy just grabbing your back pocket going, me. And it was called Drag Race High. And, I remember that show, of course, Pinks and Pastime and all of those. But when you told me that you were, the guy behind Drag Race High, I was like, man, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I'll be the first to admit it. Will, I'm sure I've told you this 100 times, that so much of what we do when it comes to television is just empty calories, just pure entertainment. But Drag Race High did my heart good. Basic premise of the show is we would take 2 high schools, the shop classes, give them $10,000. They needed to build a car, get all the parts, do all the work. They had to do everything. Now we bring in experts to help them. So Clay Milliken was the host, but we bring in, Charles Hendrickson from Pro Dyno. He'd come in and help out, or Antron Brown would come in. And Jason Line would come in and help them when they were building the motors. And so they had that kind of fantasy camp element. And the thing I can say about that show is that I got more out of that show than those kids do. And to this day, pretty much all of the kids that were on those shows, I'm still in contact with. They're telling me about their lives and getting married and having kids. And some of them have stayed into the automotive world, but some of them haven't. But they all loved that experience, because my mantra is, not every kid can go to college. Not every kid should go to college, and that, technical skills are just as important as being a doctor. I'll tell you something personal, as Will knows. I have a daughter that is going to school because she wants to be an attorney, and I have a son who went to school to be a welder, and both of those skills are just as important, So yeah, thanks, Will. Drag Race High did my heart good. I would love to bring that show back. So if there's any sponsors out there, that's what I need.
Yeah, that was man, I like that show a lot. And even any show that has to do with kids using their hands and learning the automotive industry. And one of the things that they do at the Birmingham World of Wheels, and I think John's actually been a part of it, is they bring in high school shop classes like the day before, or they bring them in early, let them in free or something like that to let the kids walk around and talk to the builders and talk to the car owners, and and to me that's always something pretty special with trying to get younger kids in this industry, because I mean, let's face it, the guys that like my dad and the older guys that grew up souping up their cars and building hot rods, it's not the same as it was back then. You can't just go get an intake and bolt it on your car. You got to have a computer and a laptop, and it seems a lot more difficult to do it now as it was back in the day. They're trying to get cars where you can't even really work on them anymore, which is very disheartening. But so anytime there's something to do with getting kids involved in automobiles, I'm all about.
Well, the two things that I learned out of that show that will surprise people is, one, the kids are too dumb to know they can't do it. Right? We gave them 9 weeks to build a race car. If I came into your shop and said, Will, I want to build a Fox body Mustang, a 10-second Fox body Mustang, nitrous, let's do it in 9 weeks, you would laugh at me. But they didn't know any better. And so what that taught me is that if you raise the bar, they will go over it. We don't need to keep making the bar lower and lower. Give them the challenge. Them dealing with sponsors, amazing to watch. Dealing with each other, time management, just all of those things. It really gave me hope. Right? It gives me hope for what we can expect out of kids that we challenge. So, and that's me on my little soapbox.
Oh,
I was going to say that's one of those things we used to do at barbers, like before the Indy car race and that. They always brought in, Fridays are always a slow day for racing. So they would bring in a lot of the local high schools for free, and they had a career walk, and there were 40 or 50 technical employers, whether they be suppliers to, Hyundai, Honda, or Mercedes, and soon to be Toyota in Alabama building cars. And it was kind of a way for them to get exposed to the racing and all of that.
Are you from Indy, John?
Am I from Indy? No. I grew up in Illinois, then Kansas, where I met Will, then DC, and now I ended up in Alabama.
So my last 2 years of high school were spent in Indianapolis, and the whole month of May was the track. It wasn't just a couple of weeks; it was the entire month. You would skip school to go out to the track, and that Friday before the race, it was just tons of kids. They would do usually the IROC race would be that night. So the Indy 500 is a big deal for me. I love that race and love that track. I have not missed a race, well, with the exception of this last year, since I was 16. My dad's been going since the 60s. As a matter of fact, he told me today we have parked in the same front yard for that race for the last 40 years.
Well, we got to spend kind of that the day before together last year at Indy,
which was awesome, which was great.
That was pretty epic. That was pretty epic. So we can't talk much about that now. But
can I tell you a small Indy story, which is podcast and VW related. So I wanted to do a show about the and tied in with the Indy 500. Well, in the 60s, the Indianapolis 500 had two VW buses, ragtop buses. That's what you used to get in, and they would take you around the track, stop at the start-finish line, and let you get out and do all that. And so I wondered what happened to these buses. And so I contacted Donald Davidson, who was the track historian. He just retired this year. And went down. I took my dad with me because I was also going to interview AJ Foyt. AJ Foyt had lost a pretty significant race to Dan Gurney and the Nassau, Bahamas. Dan Gurney was in a VW called the Inch Pincher, which is one of the most famous VWs. And so I was going to kill two birds with one stone. AJ Foyt's my dad's favorite racer. We go to Indy. I sit down with Donald Davidson. He tells me all about these VW buses and tells me he knows where one of them is because it's still in the Indy 500 collection, but he didn't know where the other one was. And that started off of that show, started a search, and someone found that bus, and it just sold this year at Barrett Jackson for like over $125,000. Someone found that Indy 500 bus and restored it. As the non-VW people will call them. They're called
buses. That's too much maintenance.
What's that?
This is too much maintenance.
Yeah, but the whole, thank God for that too much maintenance, Will, because I wouldn't know how to set the gaps on points. I wouldn't know how to adjust valves. I wouldn't know how to change my own oil, how to change a fan belt, how to, one of the biggest times I ever got in trouble as a kid was rebuilding one of those Solex carburetors from a VW on the kitchen table. Yeah. So how many Volkswagens, air-cooled Volkswagens have you owned? And for the cars, somewhere around 16 or 17. And then when I started having kids, I bought my first bus. And if you go into the Volkscast Facebook page, you'll see that bus, and that bus's name was Hank. And I take my kids camping in that bus and take it to events and do my podcast from that bus. In some ways, I think that bus was way more famous than the show was. And thankfully for me, when I decided at some point, because it was a 1970 low light bay window bus, so it means it had the Type 1 motor, same motor that's in the Bug, and so it was very underpowered, and it had a queen size bed in it, and then on the top it had a cot. And when the kids were little, it had a cot that went over the front seats. And when the kids were little, that was plenty of room. I had a side tent and all of that. But as they started to get bigger, and as you know, my kids are giants, I needed a little more room. So I decided I wanted a Riviera, which is, instead of being a Westphalia where the top pops up from the front in like a triangle shape, a Riviera pops straight up. And so there's a queen size bed up top, queen size bed at the bottom. And I would love to have another bus. I love the buses, especially, as I get older, they just ride better. Even though, fun fact about the bus, same wheelbase as the Bug, exact same wheelbase.
It's basically the same chassis.
Yep, exactly.
I haven't been around Volkswagens that much. I mean, you and I kind of built one together, which is pretty cool. And that's the most I've really ever worked on one. Learned a lot from you, and just being hands-on with this cute little Bug that we built.
It just makes sense, right? Well,
yeah, it's cool little cars,
So
look at that.
That is a rendering of Hank that you're looking at right now. What I just realized is I couldn't
find an actual photo of it.
Slowly, and I just put a photo of Hank on Instagram. But this is the rendering that John J.
Oh. He's
we were learning
he's
about
actually
the
in
rendering.
Atlanta, Georgia right now. I think they're getting pretty hammered with some bad. Right.
Well, they're getting what we had 3 or 4 hours ago, and that wasn't any fun. Oh, I heard him boot back in there. Let's see if.
So what was going to say, John Jensen is the car tank. He also did the logo for Volkscast and all that. John, amazingly talented. He's a Volkswagen guy. Sure. So John is a Volkswagen guy. But John works for Ford and did the gigantic clay model of the F40 when they were going to bring back the F40. So he's a super talented dude. And he's a VW guy, right?
Yeah, you're fine.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, you're just a little bit quieter than Will, and I've been playing with trying to keep levels up throughout the show, but we're doing okay. Nobody's complaining in the comments, so
I'm trying not to scream at my phone.
Oh, that's that podcaster thing. That's that podcast editor thing.
Exactly. So it's so much easier now to podcast, right? When I started, it was voodoo. I think the software that we used to do the audio through was a piece of software called Cool Edit Pro, which is now Adobe Audition. But you had to buy these Teloses, which I think the last one I bought was like $1,500, and that's so if somebody called in, you could take their audio and run it through the board, record it, and then the host could actually talk into the microphone, and they could hear it over the phone. It was very much like terrestrial radio then.
Yeah, it was voodoo science back then. I got a $500 board and a $10 adapter. I can talk to you through my iPhone if I had to.
I know it's insane now. It's insane.
So, and it's amazing how complicated people still make it, but it helps pay the bills.
Absolutely. Podcasting is very much, I think, because the pandemic exploded. It's funny because I got an email from a fan from the Volkscast days, and he asked me if I was ever going to put those shows up on the internet, and I said I had them on hard drive. Hard drive crapped out a couple years ago, so those shows are lost to the ages. And he said, well, I've been moving them from PC to PC. I saved every single one of them. Would you like me to send them to you? Right. So he sent me all of those shows. And so I decided to get rid of all the crap out of them, which, where you're talking about topical things that are happening in the VW world and events and all that stuff, and just take out some of those interviews, because I was fortunate enough to talk to some pretty... The Bruce Meyer interview is literally one of my favorite interviews ever. That guy, he invented the Myers Maddox. He invented the dune buggy.
I've met Bruce a couple of times.
Bruce, beautiful man, wonderful person. But, so much more than just this inventor of the dune buggy. He was in World War II, and his boat was attacked by kamikazes, and he was in the Merchant Marines, and he was an artist. And to do a fiberglass, doing that fiberglass dune buggy in the middle 60s, fiberglass was still an exotic material. It was like doing carbon fiber was a few years ago. It was exotic. And so to decide to do that, it's pretty impressive, right? When people think outside the box like that.
I got to have dinner with him a couple of years back at Carlisle. He was featured there a few times, and it's one of these guys that you don't know what to ask. You just sit there and listen to the stories.
Yeah. He and I were supposed to do a half an hour interview. We ended up talking for a little over 2 hours, and I barely edited any of it out because it was just all so compelling. Even when we weren't talking about cars, we got off on a tangent about literature at one point. And he's just that kind of guy. And I think that's I think we kind of forget that sometimes as car guys. The cars bring us in, but we're all three-dimensional people. We're not just the car that we drive or the cars that we love, right?
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that I've met through cars, and we get on the phone now. We don't even talk cars. We're talking cooking or moonshine or bourbon or cigars or, we don't even talk cars. I mean, we do it all day, every day, and
Exactly.
you find out you have a lot of other things in common with those people, and that's what you gravitate to, So, like John in podcast.
Exactly.
You all right over there? What are you drinking?
Excuse me. Yeah, it's that COVID,
Maybe you need something
No,
stouter in that.
I just drinking my diet Pepsi. So.
Yeah. That
Maybe
right
it's probably because I skipped having a cigar.
There we go. See, I love me some Cubans. I love me some cigars. So I need to ask you guys, because you've had my favorite person in the whole world on. You had Clay on. How was that for you, John?
It was a great interview. Unfortunately, we tried a new piece of software and it screwed up his end. The guy that's the professional that does it just got done with his Facebook Live. It messed up his interview, and I'm working with my Isotope RX now, trying to save that interview. I really don't want to make him come back on and spend another hour with us because, that first interview, you get the raw good stuff, and even if you'll never replicate that. So I'm trying to put it back, but it was kind of good. We talked to him about his Kroger days and driving a forklift, and it was enjoyable, and hopefully one day our listeners get to participate with it.
Well, you should get him back on. He is literally one of my favorite people in the whole world. He is exactly who you think he is going to be. In the early days of the speed stuff, when Rich and I were, coming up with ideas and pitching them to speed and everything, and I had said to him at one point, Clay, I love this guy. When win or lose, when he gets out of the car and does that interview, he's the happiest guy to be there. And Rich and Clay happened to meet each other at PRI one year because Rich was going to try to arm drop 2 top fuel cars. And Clay's like, there's no way you can stand in between 2 top fuel cars. But Rich was going to try. And started the relationship, and I've had Clay's hosted Blowed Up for me, hosted Drag Race High for me, a ton of shows. And I always try to work him into every show that I do.
Why don't can we get you to take a second, and I'm going to say a second, you'll probably go 3 minutes, but give us a list of all the automotive shows that you've been tied to. I mean, you keep dropping a new one and dropping a new one. I want to know.
Okay. So
all the automotive shows that you've been tied to that you can remember.
Let's see. Launch Hour, Blow It Up, Pastime, Drag Race High, One and Done, Speed Records, the show that I hosted, which was called Rapid Turnover. I just showed that to my son on YouTube. We had a good laugh about that a couple of days ago because he was little when I did that show. I was the voice of that show. They're pigs all out.
Was there something with IHRA?
Is that enough? Oh, IHRA, Nitro Jam, Burnout. Yeah, I've been fortunate to do a lot of car stuff and love every minute of it. Yeah, IHRA Nitro Jam was great. There was a few years ago, the IHRA had really come on, had some juice, and was trying to get back to that heady days of being competition for the NHRA. And because, you got to remember, in the 80s, early 90s, the IHRA and the NHRA, those top fuel guys, They'd run the IHRA, they'd run the NHRA, and it was great competition.
And there was really only one driver. One driver
came back
that could transition from IHRA to NHRA and still compete and still win, and that was Clay Milton.
I mean, people forget. He won something like 51 rounds without losing. He won 6 world championships in a row. He, to this day, at most tracks, still owns either the elapsed time or the speed record at most.
I'm pretty sure he still has it for
they're still running. Clay probably has the record for him. He dominated. And
the day
you never know.
The day he walked in that door right there,
just never.
And I thought we were gonna have to pick my dad up off the floor. Oh yeah, that was a good day. Ray was actually.
That was a great day. Well, I mean, as everyone knows, Will in real life,
right.
The best part of Will is
his wife
and his dad and his mom.
My kids.
So that's the best part of the package.
Can't forget about them. God help them.
So yeah, I've been really fortunate. There was a time with Speed where, to their credit, they really gave us a lot of. They took chances and they let us do a lot of stuff. One of the things I'll always be grateful to them is it was probably a year before they were going to become Fox Sports 1, and we had just we were getting ready to do another season of Drag Race High. We had found the schools. We had sent all the gear out to the state that we were going to do it in, and rented apartments, and because that show we would shoot for 90 days straight, and then bring everything back and edit it into 10 episodes. And we were getting ready to head out to start shooting that, and they called Bob Ecker, who was the head of programming and development at Speed, called and said, "Hey, look, we're going to become Fox Sports 1, and so we're going to have to cancel Drag Race High, and we're not going to do any new shows between now and when we make the change." Well, literally for that entire year, you couldn't turn on that channel without it being a show that I hadn't produced, and that was amazing. Whether it was Pastime or Drag Race High or Speed Records or whatever, because we were smart enough back in the days when we did Speed Records and all that. I don't know if you guys remember these days, but in 2007 to like 2009, we lived in an SD world, a standard definition world. And Martin Fisher, who was the owner of the production company I worked for, and a guy who I'll forever be indebted to, we made the decision to shoot everything in HD. So when there was that SD to HD transition, guess what? They only played our stuff because it was already in HD. And when Speed was going off the air, they just played the heck out of our stuff, which allowed us to set ourselves up, at another network. Because at the end of the day, television, like anything else, is a relationship business. Like the car business, it's all about relationships and do they believe you can get it done and all that other stuff. So, yeah, I always appreciate Bob Ecker for doing that for us.
Well, I know back in those days, it seemed like I watched a lot more TV then than I do now. And I mean, I'd get home and flip it on Speed. And that's just what, especially if I went over to Mom and Dad's, because that's all Dad ever watched was Speed. And it didn't matter what was on; it was on Speed Channel. And so it's kind of it's kind of crazy how everything comes full circle.
I'll give you a funny little piece of trivia. Do you remember what the name of Pastime was before it was Pastime? There were 5 episodes that were on that. It was Pastime the show, but it wasn't called Pastime then.
Oh man, I remember watching it.
It was part of a concept they had. We called it Launch Hour. So basically, we did 5 episodes of a show concept, and then let the audience decide.
It was
an hour-long show.
It was, God dang.
It was a horrible name on purpose.
Yeah, guess the time or something like that, wasn't it?
Name that test in 2.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, I remember it.
And somewhere, and I think it's up on Facebook somewhere, probably on the Pastime page. I think I put it up there. To show Speed kind of what the idea was. It was me, Clay Milliken, and Ken Herring, if you remember Ken.
Yep.
We stood on the stage at Cordova Dragway, and Rich played the part of Brett Wagner, and we brought up a rental car and did the whole spiel, the whole mechanics of the thing, and wrote our times on a piece of paper and held it up. Yeah, that was the other thing. Pastime at the beginning, we had whiteboards. So they'd write on these whiteboards and show it to the audience. And that lasted the first taping. And then we're like, no, this doesn't work.
This
is too low tech.
All right. So we've talked Pastime a lot. And I know you and I have talked about this. You probably know where I'm going. The most famous Pastime passed down the drag strip. All right.
Yeah.
It was a black Fox body Mustang, right? Was it
White
black?
Fox body Mustang.
White. Okay. Well, I remember I was watching it, and when this dude left the line, my eyes were like, whoa. And so, I mean, I can't remember what Ken and all the guys guessed, but, they were, probably 1140s or whatever, stock bottom men, nothing's crazy. And this dude clicks off like an 8 pin or some crazy shit. So I know that kind of ruffled your feathers a little bit, right?
I was pretty upset because here's the thing about Pastime. Pastime is that 15 minutes of fame for those guys when they pull up in their cars. It's an opportunity for them to show to their friends, to their family, that all those late nights in the garage, they're not crazy, right? They get to show off. And it's all about making them look good. And it's also about the contestants showing that, you know what? And when it comes to cars, when it comes to this thing, they are smarter than any Jeopardy contestant. And so when somebody comes up and just flat out lies and doesn't give them an opportunity to kind of, show what they know, that really made me upset. And I think I've even told you, there was one episode that never aired that we shot in Vegas where a contestant, so the way Pastime works is, we get 300 or 400 cars that would show up. And in the beginning, I would go out and pick all the cars. And then as the seasons went on, we brought in a friend of mine, Troy, and Troy would go out and put together the cars. And, we kind of had a flow that we like to have. I'm a fan of the ridiculous. So, if you showed up with a little red wagon that did 6s, I want to see that. Right. And so you would line all those 10 cars up just before we'd start taping so that we could do all those beauty shots. So when a guy says, this is the kind of motor I have, you see that beautiful shot of the motor and, all of that stuff. Well, this guy, his daughter was on the show. He went down and just basically asked those guys, hey, man, what does this thing run? What does it run? What does it run? And then went and told her, and then she went up on stage and just kind of made a mockery of the show. She was asking the contestants not, what rear end you got in that car. She was saying boxers or briefs, and that always drove me crazy, right? If you didn't we're there to have fun, but don't make a joke out of it,
right?
But we let her keep the $2,000. We just never aired the show.
Y'all got the last laugh.
It sucked because the 10 people, the 10 cars that were on that show never saw the light of day.
Right.
And that breaks my heart for those people,
Yeah, cheating's never cool. And that definitely classifies as cheating. So if she would have played it cool, she could have cheated and got away with it, which is part of racing, really. I mean, that's been part of racing from day one, is cheating and not getting caught. It's not really cheating, till you get caught. So
yeah, we worked hard on trying not to have cheaters. Like, if you noticed, contestants that typically wasn't their home track, they were from the other side of the country. We tried to do that as often as possible. Every now and again, there would be somebody that was kind of their home track, but you knew because of their skill level, it was a wash, and typically everyone knew that. Like, we were in Valdosta, Georgia, and I love Valdosta. That's where Duck puts on those radial.
Oh yeah,
that's Duck puts on some of the. He's one of the biggest supporters of Pastime and one of the best promoters that I know. So we were down in Valdosta, and we had went out one night to blow off some steam because it'd been kind of a tough shoot just because of weather. Weather was always it was never cars or any of that. Usually it was weather that would kick our butts. And the bartender was like, "Oh my God, Pastime! I love that show. I'm gonna get everyone out of the bar here. And we're gonna leave it open for you for the rest of the night." So guess what? I brought that guy on the show,
right?
Because he showed us so much hospitality, and he did pretty good. He almost won.
Ken was hard to beat.
So
I'm going to be mean and say we're bumping up on that 60-minute mark. And I would love to get you back, Ray, in a little bit more organized fashion and have you all mentally prepared. I appreciate you jumping on. You talked about how hard it is to get podcast guests, and we'll put you together in 5 minutes or less.
Well, that's just
less than 5 minutes.
That's just a testament of our friendship, and
yes.
And Ray was probably honestly getting ready to sit down and watch it. So might as well call him and have him be on it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been great listening to you and that. We've had our audio ups and downs. The audio podcast will be nice and clean and perfect. But video's video. And that's why, sorry, Ray, I know that's your game now, but
it's okay. It's okay. It's funny. When Will called, I was actually editing the show that I'm going to put up on Volkscast archives tomorrow, which
I guess Ray decided to leave us.
Volkscast Facebook page. Go check it out. Especially
he said the Volkscast archives. I wonder if that is the same as Volkscast Radio.
I don't know. I'll have to do a little digging and see. So
yeah, he might pop back up here in a minute. But again, like I said, I'll clean up this audio. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Got a comment on Ray's goatee. Facebook, Instagram. Be watching Instagram. We listened to Derek last week, and we're putting up Tomorrow in History now, being very well received. There was the trivia question today, and if I can relate it back to an episode, or if I can come up with trivia questions, I got a bunch of stuff here that I want to give away. It might be stickers, it might be T-shirts, it might be I don't know. I'm really trying to downsize. I might even throw some Corvette promotional stuff in there. No affiliation with Derek. I just happen to have a garage full of Corvette stuff for some odd reasons. But I don't know if Ray's going to make it back, but it was great having him. We thank him for being on the show, and we owe Will a lot. A lot of our listeners, a lot of our Facebook, a lot of our social media is because of Will. And, he says, I do it all. I'm going to be nice, and I'm actually going to say publicly, Will's helped this show tremendously on his end, too. I mean, I was very strategic when I chose my co-hosts.
Well, if I could figure out a schedule and actually, have some time to put forth an effort to promote social media a little bit better, it'd be a lot better. But it's a tough thing to do, running a hot rod shop with several employees and wives and kids and doing a TV show and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, you've got. I just wonder. You've got 6 cars. I think you said maybe 8 cars going to SEMA. Anybody who can top that, let me know. There's
I know 4 is dead set on. I think some of the other ones may have backs. Well, 5 100%. A couple others may be sliding back a little bit. I don't know. It's the rest of them are out of my control. I really can't. I can't be.
Hey, you put them together. It's up to the owners to live up to the show.
Right, exactly. They basically have spots, but they have to do their part to honor it and get them out there and everything else. I mean, I'm going to be responsible for getting 3 or 4 out there, 3 for sure, possibly 4, and that's physically all I can do. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot, especially when you only have a 2-car trailer.
Yeah, waiting for that 54-foot stacker or 56-foot stacker.
Yeah. I think 56 might be a little illegal. I think 53 is about as big as you can get.
I don't know. I just see numbers on Walmart trucks every now and then or something like that. But it was good having you tonight, Will. It was great having Ray. Check out Volkscast Radio. We'll put some links up on our social media and stuff about it. I know I've got a lot of air-cooled buddies out there. I tried putting something up on my Facebook page, but, last minute, it shows you need to tune in every week because you'll never know what we have in store.
Yeah, come on, RJ. Get with the program.
He talked about what's this NBA Finals? I don't understand that. New big action. I don't know what it is. So
I got to give one.
Well, that's it.
I got to give one shout out to Trevor Moon. He has seen where he tuned in early and said what's up. So man, Trevor been doing great, and hope you can.
And I meant to say to this Jimmy guy that, he's last commentator last week, first commentator this week.
There you go.
And there's Ray coming up on the comments saying thanks. So sorry about the rough internet connection. We'll have him back. I think we can, when everything's prepped and we're all on our game, I think we'll have a great, great show with him. Not that tonight's wasn't bad. There's some juicy nuggets tonight. Will, you have a good night. I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, should I play a video clip to get out of here or something? What do I have in store? I think I don't even know what this one is. I'll play this one. I don't know what it is, but we're out of here.
Adios.